Lesson 3 in the Andes and mid-latitude countries brings us to our study of life in the region. Our central question today is, what makes a culture unique? We're going to break down this lesson into 3 parts and dive into the information that it presents us. First, about the people and places. While doing so, you're going to answer the questions about the population of the Andean and mid-latitude countries and fill in those blanks here to these 5 questions. My advice to you, and what you'll see Mr. Shane model, is that as he's reading through this section, he's looking specifically for some of these key terms that are going to pop up that are from the questions. So when it talks about population patterns, or the coastal area of the population rim, Buenos Aires in Argentina, the comparison between those two, shanty towns, and Maria Elena Moyano. Wherever he hears and sees those words, and I've pre-read these questions, I'm going to mark that in my head to say that's something I got to come back to because it might help me answer these questions. I want to read through the entire thing so that I can build my fluency and stamina, and then come back to reread and focus my attention to answer these questions. You'll see me do that. In the second section, we're turning our study to people and culture, and we're going to use our textbook to identify each culture or tradition from the mid-latitude regions. You can see here are the definitions or the descriptions of those peoples and cultures. We're going to match what we read with those descriptions. And lastly, we're going to take a look at the ongoing issues and use our reading comprehension to understand if these statements are true or false from what we read. Again, our strategy today is to read through and then go back and reread to identify specifically what these questions are looking for. Let's jump into it. Lesson 3, life in the region, people and places. The population of the Andean region is not evenly distributed. Population patterns in this region reflect the changing impact of politics, economics, and the availability of natural resources and jobs. Population density. The people of the region come from many different places. 3 centuries of colonization by Spain have left their mark on the population. Enslaved Africans were brought as laborers, especially in Peru. This was less common in the countries of the region after independence. Immigrants from many European countries traveled to settle in South America. Immigrants also came from Asia. Today, Bolivia and Peru have large native populations. Argentina and Chile have many people of European ancestry, including Spanish, Italian, British, and German backgrounds. Peru has descendants of people from Europe, but also people with origins in Japan and Southwest Asia. In the Andean and mid-latitude countries, as with the whole continent, the population is densest in the coastal areas. This area is sometimes called the population rim. The rugged mountainous areas and the tropical rainforests have discouraged settlement in many inland areas. Transportation is often difficult, and communication can be slow or non-existent. Coastal regions often offer fertile land, favorable climates, and easy transportation. Large cities and communities. The largest cities in the region is Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina. This is a bustling port and cultural center. It resembles European cities with its parks, buildings, outdoor cafes, and wide streets. About 2.8 million people live in the central city of Buenos Aires, but the metropolitan area includes 11.5 million people. This is more than a fourth of Argentina's entire population. Argentina is, as a whole, not very densely populated, but the area in and around Buenos Aires is. Buenos Aires and many other large cities in the region have shanty towns. These makeshift communities often spring up on the outskirts of a city. Poor people migrate here from remote inland areas to seek a better life. They cannot afford houses or apartments in the city or suburbs, so they settle in shanty towns. They build shacks from scraps of sheet metal, wood, and other materials. And the shanty towns often lack sewer, running water, sometimes electricity, and other services. They tend to be dangerous places with widespread crime. In Lima, the capital and largest city in Peru, the shanty towns are called pueblos jóvenes. That means young towns. One pueblo joven has home to Maria Elena Moyano. She worked to improve education, nutrition, and job opportunities in the Pueblo Joven. She refused to give in to the demands of the government or to the communist rebels who assassinated her in 1992. She has become recognized as a national hero for her courage. This picture shows what some of these shanty towns look like. You can see in Buenos Aires the bustling population, and just outside of that town would be where you have a large majority of people. This looks like it's a very civilized area, but a large majority of people live in these shanties, which are made out of just mere scraps and leftovers, don't have running water, don't have sewage. People got to find different means for those different types of things. So they are described as slums, ghettos, or shanty towns, pueblos jóvenes, in this area. In our reading, the last question says, who was Maria Elena Moyano? Because we just freshly read that, let's go ahead and answer it. It says that she worked to improve education, nutrition, and job opportunities in the Pueblo Joven. She refused to give in to demands of the government and the communist rebels who assassinated her. She's become recognized as a national hero for her courage. If I were to sum that up, that entire paragraph, it probably looked like this. She was an activist who worked to improve education, nutrition, and job opportunities in the shantytown where she lived. She was assassinated and recognized as a hero in her hometown. Why was she assassinated? Well, from the lower parts of society, when people start to make noise and they start to complain and they start to blame the upper parts of society for their problems, sometimes the people in the upper parts of society want to snuff out that voice that can rise up amongst a lot of people that are in that same situation. So she's assassinated because she's speaking for a lot of people that live in really worse conditions than others, and somebody might not want that person complaining or that person to get a lot of followers to lead some type of revolution or activity. So she's taken out, but she's recognized as a national hero. Now, why do these shanty towns spring up where they do? Well, to live in one of these major cities, it actually costs quite a bit of money. So people don't have the ability to afford a house. They can't take out a mortgage and have this payment over a long period of time because they don't have maybe the means for their education or a job, and they can't afford the apartments because the closer you get to the city, the greater the prices go up for apartments because people want to live closer to where there's more opportunity. So right here it says that they cannot afford the cities or suburbs, so they settle in shanty towns. I'd sum that up by saying this. That's not the that's not what we want in there. That was the same answer as before. What if we said that? Poor people come to the city looking for a better life, but they cannot afford housing, so they build makeshift shacks on the edges of the city. They can't afford where they're trying to live because the city has more opportunity, but in order to get that opportunity, there's got to be a money investment up front in order to be close to where that opportunity is. They don't have that money up front, so they make do with settling in a less than ideal situation and still trying to benefit from living close to the city where those job opportunities arise. Number three, how is Buenos Aires different from the rest of Argentina? It mentioned in its description of Buenos Aires that it is the largest city in Argentina. It has a lot of resemblance to a European city with parks, buildings, outdoor cafes, and wide streets. And it has a massive population in comparison to the rest of Argentina, which is not very densely populated. In and around Buenos Aires, there's 11.5 million people. The rest of Argentina is sparsely populated because of the landscape and the geography. Number two, why is the coastal area of South America called the population rim? If you think about the geography in this region, you know that all along this Pacific coast, you have the Andes Mountains. So it's really difficult to live in these areas. But if you zoom in, there's actually some coastal plain area before those mountains. So right in here, you can actually have quite a bit of population that lives in this area. Otherwise, it's really difficult to live in these areas that are deep in the mountains. That's what we would describe as the population rim. Here it says, in the Andean and mid-latitude countries, as with the whole continent, and population is densest in the coastal areas. This is called the population rim. So we would say, to answer number two, population is densest in the coastal areas. And number one, what factors affect the population patterns in the region? Well, obviously, one of the largest factors is going to be the physical geography, but there's also a sense of the history and politics that have been involved in this place, the economics that create jobs and development, and the availability of those natural resources for those jobs. So where settlements have set down in the course of history is a big influence, but now cities develop and they continue to develop based on if there are natural resources there, if there's industry there, because then people are going to live there or move there or seek jobs there in that area. So the physical geography sets a tone. The history tells us the story of where these cities are. These settlements are based on colonization, and now you have politics and economics driving those cities' developments. It's no different in any other part of the world. Let's read through our second section, people and culture. People and cultures. The Andean and mid-latitude regions are home to a wide range of ethnic groups. Although many people trace their ancestry back to Europe, Asia, and Africa, Native American groups still thrive in parts of the region. The Guarani is a Native American group that lives mainly in Paraguay, but people of Guarani descent can also be found in Argentina, Bolivia, and Brazil. The Guarani lived in the tropical rainforest and practiced slash and burn agriculture, cutting and burning small areas of the forest to clear land for farming. After a few years, the soil's nutrients were used up and people moved to a new area. Today, Guarani customs and folk art are an important part of the culture in Paraguay. Guarani is one of the country's official languages. A related language is Siriono. The Siriono live in eastern Bolivia and Peru. Quechua, a surviving language of the Central Andes, is still widely spoken, along with Spanish. Traditional medicine. In Bolivia, the custom of Calavera medicine is widespread. You can see a picture here of a Calavera healer or medicine man. Calavera might come from the Amerindian word of doctor. Calavera healers use traditional herbs and rituals in their cures. Many Bolivians seek the help of Calaveras when they get sick, either because they prefer these healers or because they cannot afford to go to doctors. In fact, 40% of the Bolivian population relies on the natural healers who travel from place to place. Religion and the arts. During the centuries of Spanish colonization, the Roman Catholic Church was one of the region's most important institutions. The influence of the Catholic Church continues. Millions of people practice mixed religions. Many of the native peoples of the Andes combine their indigenous rituals and beliefs with Roman Catholicism. Others have adopted Protestant religions. Traditional arts, crafts, music, and dance thrive in the Andean and mid-latitude countries. In literature, two Chilean poets, Gabriel Mistral and Pablo Neruda, have won the Nobel Prize for Literature. The works of writers from Argentina include Jorge Luis Borges and Manuel Puig, popular with readers around the world. Isabel Allende from Chile, a cousin of the country's former president Salvador Allende, is a contemporary writer of great distinction. Many writers have been praised for the use of magical realism. This style combines everyday events with magical or mythical elements. It is especially popular in Latin America. To compare a genre, or to give you an example of a genre to what's popular here that's being described, you think of like Harry Potter. In the stories of Harry Potter, you have normal people living amongst secret magicians, and they have these secret powers and the secret school of Hogwarts. That type of literature or storyline is similar to what's being described here of magic realism. Daily life. In large cities and towns and in wealthier areas, family life revolves around parents and children. In the countryside, extended families are more common in the region. The compadre relationship is still valued. This relationship is a strong bond between child's parents and other adults who serve as the child's godparents. Maybe you have godparents. Maybe when you were baptized, your parents asked somebody to be your guardian or godparent, and that means that their job, their commitment is to look over and take care of you and to make sure that you're growing in your faith. In a megacity like Buenos Aires, people can wander through large modern shopping malls. They may dine in outdoor cafes or fancy restaurants. They may work in the modern office buildings. And traditional Andean foods on the countryside include pachamanca in Peru. This is a mix of lamb, pork, and chicken baked in an earthen oven. Pachamanca dates back to the time of the Incan Empire. Soccer or football is the most popular sport in the region. Soccer is Argentina's national game, and its teams have won several World Cup titles. Equestrian sports or sports featuring riders on horseback are popular in the region as well. Argentina's polo team have long dominated international competition. The Argentina team won the first ever Olympic polo gold medal in 1924. Football is also the national sport for many of the other countries in the region. When they say football, they're talking about soccer. The top professional leagues, the American Football Confederation, is made up of teams from 10 South American nations. League teams are eligible for the World Cup and the American Cup. Other popular sports include basketball, golf, boxing, and rugby. Social life focuses on family visits, patriotic events, religious feast days, and festivals. Let's go and read our definitions and see if we can match up those definitions or descriptions with the people and cultures that we read about. Number 1, a Native American group whose language, customs, and folk art are an important part of culture in Paraguay. Now I'm going to go back to the beginning instead of working backwards this time, because I think those questions follow with the same line. In Paraguay, I remember reading about the Guarani. So here we have, for the first one, the Guarani. Number 2, a healing custom in Bolivia that uses traditional herbs and rituals to cure sicknesses. Here we had the picture. This was a Callaway healer who uses traditional methods and efforts to cure the sick. It was said that people in South America often sometimes will go and see a Callaway medicine doctor rather than actually going to a doctor because they can't afford to go to a real doctor, and they rely on these traditional methods rather than on the developed science of medicine that you and I might experience. If you've ever been to the ER or to the clinic and all the things that they do there, very different from what you would experience for a Callaway doctor. Number 3, a style of literature popular in Latin America that combines everyday events with magical or mythical elements. We said that was magic realism. We compared that to kind of the storyline of Harry Potter and the genre that creates, that there's real life happening, but there's this magic that is also around. Number 4, the important and valued relationship between the child's parents and other adults who serve as the godparents. That is the compadre relationship. When my wife and I are baptizing our children, we choose our brothers and sisters on my side of the family and her side of the family to be those godparents. It doesn't mean that if anything happens to us that those people assume the role of parents for our children, but it does mean that they're given this extra special responsibility to make sure that the kids are okay, that they're supported in their education, and most importantly, they're supported in their faith. Number 5, a traditional Andean food made of a mixture of lamb, pork, and chicken. We said that was pachamanca, was a traditional dish coming back and dating to the Incan Empire. Lastly, we're going to take a look at the ongoing issues and use true and false to answer these questions. Let's quickly read through them and then have a chance to pick out while we're reading if they're true and false, and then we can use our rereading strategy again. Number 1, the population of Andean and mid-latitude countries is growing extremely quickly. Number 2, the landscape of this region has made economic development difficult. Number 3, agriculture, mining, fishing are important economic activities in Peru. Number 4, the people of Bolivia agreed with the government's plan to transport natural gas through Chile because it's cheaper than transporting it through Peru. Number 5, although agriculture, mining, and fishing are important, industries in the region, manufacturing and service industries, are growing because more important to the nation's economy. 6, because of the difficult terrain in the Andes, there are no roads or railroads in the region. 7, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Brazil are part of the Union of South American Nations, which foster free trade and close political unity. And 8, in the future, the countries in this region will have to address serious environmental issues and resolve continuing border disputes. Let's get back to our reading for this section. Oops. Looks like it logged me out. We're going to go to where we were. Ongoing issues. Our essential question or guiding question is here: are the environmental and economic issues affecting the region? Population growth rate in the Andean and mid-latitude countries is generally not high. However, population is growing enough in some places to add to today's challenges of earning a living. Earning a living. It is difficult to build strong economies in the Andean region, largely because of the rugged terrain. Many countries rely heavily on agriculture, which is limited and difficult in the mountains. About 1/3 of Peruvians, for example, are farmers. They grow potatoes, coffee, and corn or terraces built into the mountain slopes. Farms in the valleys along the coast produce sugarcane, asparagus, mangoes, and other crops. Mining and fishing are important economic activities in Peru. Mines in the mountains produce silver, zinc, copper, and other minerals. Peru also produces oil and natural gas. The country's coastal waters are rich fishing grounds. Much of the fish that are caught in this ground and turned into fish meal or animal feed and fertilizer. Let's do a quick check. Population is growing extremely quickly. It said that was false because it's dependent upon the economic activity that is growing. So the population growth rate is low. It's growing, but not at a rapid rate. Number two, the landscape of the region has made economic development difficult. We would say that that is true because it's really difficult to move mountains and to go through and around mountains in this region. Number three, agriculture, mining, and fishing are important activities in Peru. It just gave us the description of where those agriculture activities are. Obviously, the mining that's happened in the mountainous region and the fishing that's happening in the Pacific Ocean. Management of natural resources presents many important issues and challenges. An example is conflicted between countries over gas reserves. Bolivia has the second largest reserve of natural gas in Latin America. Bolivia is landlocked, so to export the gas, it must move through Peru or Chile. In 2003, the Bolivian government proposed moving the natural gas through Chile because it would be cheaper than an alternate plan to go through Peru. The Bolivian people turned out in huge numbers to protest. In Bolivia, suspicion and anger against Chile are widespread. These feelings date back to the Pacific War of the 1880s when Chile took over Bolivia's former coastal lands. As the economies in the region develop, the primary economic activities of agriculture, mining, and fishing remain important. Other activities have become important as well. About 20% of the workers in the region are employed in the secondary or manufacturing sector. They work in factories and make products. About 65% find jobs in the tertiary or services sector. They work in a wide variety of occupations ranging from transportation and retail to sales, banking, and education. It's interesting as it describes Bolivia's issue because Bolivia is here in the country, it's landlocked. It has to send its oil pipeline through Chile, which it doesn't want to do because it's not very good friends with Chile, so it would rather send its oil pipeline all the way up here to go through Peru. Okay, so here's Peru and Chile. Bolivia's on the interior. It can't get any of its goods out of its own country because it's more difficult to go this way. It's longer to go this way. It's shortest to go to the Pacific Ocean this way, so it has to go through one of those two countries, and it chooses to do what is more expensive because they don't have a good standing relationship with Chile. Speaking of Chile and some of the different type of economic development that's happening in this region, we have a video that describes a major factor that's coming from South America that influences you and I every day that you may not even know. Let's take a look.
For generations, fossil fuels have been the main source of energy for lighting our homes and powering our cars. But now Americans are looking for new, greener sources of power. Mark Strassman found one in the Andes Mountains of South America.
Nothing grows in Chile's Salar de Atacama Desert, the driest place on the planet and one of the most remote. But to Tim McKenna, what's underground is paradise.
It has the ideal conditions for what you see here.
McKenna's company produces lithium, the world's lightest metal, and lithium powers the batteries in the cell phones, Blackberries, and laptops that power the world.
This is the richest deposit, ideal conditions, and that's why it works here.
Melting snow from the Andes Mountains runs into underground brine pools. That brine is pumped out, and in this network of ponds, the desert sun evaporates out other salts.
The sun basically does all the work.
The brine's processed into white powder, lithium carbonate, a growing part of the world's energy future. Two companies, one American, one Chilean, produce half the world's lithium right in this salt basin. In your cell phone or Blackberry's battery, the lithium weighs 1/10 of an ounce. In a plug-in car, the battery's lithium weighs 20 pounds. In 10 years, lithium's price per pound has tripled to around $3, with only 3 major companies dominating the world's market in a half-dozen countries. Chile, the largest supplier, has been called the Saudi Arabia of lithium.
It looks very similar to an OPEC-style cartel. It's highly concentrated. The various producers are sort of secretive about their expansion plans, about their pricing movements.
Lithium producers deny that. Consumers will wait and see. But no question, in the world's evolving energy science, lithium means power.
So every single day that you're using your phone or laptop or any small piece of technology, it's using mostly lithium batteries that come right from the region that we're studying. Transportation and trade. This region has many geographic and regional barriers. The Andes limit construction of roads and railroads, yet highways do link large cities. The Pan American Highway, for example, runs from Argentina to Panama. The countries northward are, after a break in the highway, A Trans-Andean highway connects the cities in Chile and Argentina. Peru and Brazil are building the Transoceanic Highway. Parts of it opened in 2012. Eventually, this road will link Amazon River ports in Brazil with Peruvian ports on the Pacific Ocean. Unlike other countries, Argentina has an effective railway system. Trade also connects countries. In 1991, a trade agreement known as Mercosur was signed by Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Brazil. In 2011, Mercosur merged into a new organization, the Union of South American Nations. The Union set up an economic and political zone modeled after the European Union. Its goals are to foster free trade and closer political unity. Addressing challenges. Looking toward the future, the Andean and mid-latitude countries must address many challenges. Environmental issues are among the most important. Air and water pollution is a major problem, especially in the shanty towns of urban areas with a lack of sewage systems and garbage collection increase disease. Disputed borders have presented challenges for years. For example, Bolivia and Paraguay along long disputed rights to a region thought of to be rich in oil. In 1998, Peru and Ecuador finally settled a territorial dispute after years of tension marked by episodes of armed conflict. Border wars use up resources of people, money, time, and brain power that could be used to address economic development and environmental concerns. Back to our true and false. Number 4, the people of Bolivia agree with the government's plan to transport gas through Chile. That would be entirely false because they don't like Chile and they don't trust Chile, so they're going to spend more money to send their goods through Peru. Number 5, although agriculture, mining, and fishing are important industries in the region, manufacturing and service industries are growing and becoming more important to the nation's economy. That's true. We saw the example of manufacturing in terms of the lithium industry. 6, because of the difficult terrain in the Andes, there are no roads or railroads in the region. That'd be false. There are some major highways that link the major cities in the Andean region, and there are some railroads that can make it through. 7, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Brazil are part of the Union of South America. That is true. Fosters free trade and closer political unity. And lastly, in the future, the countries in this region will have to address serious environmental issues and resolve continuing border disputes. That is also true. Thanks for following along. God's blessings.